Hello and welcome back to Poly Modeling inside of 3D Studio Max 2013. I am your instructor, Domingo L. Cunningham, and let's get started. So, here inside of 3D Studio Max, as you can see, I have set up my viewport to be a tri configuration. So I have one viewport up here for my perspective view, one for my top, and one for my side. Now, realistically, these are all the viewports that I need to actually model out my car in basically 2 dimensions and get myself a 3-dimensional representation in my perspective viewport. So I've got my top view and my side view set up, and we set these up in the first video. And if you have any problems going back to set those up, make sure you check out the first video, go back and look at how we set these picture planes up and get them lined up inside of 3D Studio Max. Alright, so let's begin. So first off, when I'm doing this, I like to start with the side view. And I like to get my stuff lined up in the side view so that I can just kind of get it laid out where I really need it to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the command panel, and I'm going to make sure that I'm in the geometry set of my command panel, so we can see that I'm in my command panel over here, which is on my right hand side, and then I can see I'm in create, geometry, and then I'm just going to make a plane. And I'm just going to take this and drag myself out a simple plane. Now, once I have this plane dragged out, I'm going to make sure that I jump over to modify, and I'm going to turn down the amount of length segments and width segments. I really only want 2 by 2. And I'm going to look at this in perspective. Click into my perspective view and look at it. Let's get my move tool. And I'm going to zoom in right here in perspective. Get this kind of lined up. And I'm going to take this and pull this over right here on the side of my model. I'll look at this in my top view and see where this is lining up at. I can see it right there on my door. And then on my side view, it's perfect. Alright? The first thing I want to do is I want to take this polygon plane and convert this into something that I can edit. So what I want to do is I'm going to right click on my plane. I'm going to come down here into where it says convert to, and I'm going to convert to editable poly. And when I convert it to an editable poly, I have some options. So as I start to work with this, if you're a beginner user of 3D Studio Max, then one thing you'll have to get used to is how you actually manipulate your polygons into the shapes that you need. And I can easily do that. I have a couple of ways and a couple of subsets or sub-objects of this polygon plane. The first sub-object of this polygon plane that I have are vertexes. And when I hit the 1 key, so I'm going to hit the 1 key on the keyboard, you can see I get these little blue vertexes to show up. And these guys can be selected, and I can move these independently of each other and move them around. If I hit the 2 key on the keyboard, I will go into the sub-object mode of edge mode. Edge mode allows me to grab an edge and basically move that edge around. And then when I hit 3, 3 will actually put me, as you can see, it puts me into border mode. And border mode is the outside border of any polygon. So if I had a box with a hole in it, then that hole would have a border edge. And as you can see right now, that my polygon plane has a border edge. My next set or sub-object that I have in here is face mode. Face mode lets me select each one of these individual faces and then move them around. And when I'm in face mode, it moves around the vertexes, the edges, and everything connected to it. The last thing I have in my sub-object mode is element mode. Element mode is the whole entire object. So when I'm in element mode, it will select the entire object as I click on it. Alright? So right now I'm going to go to vertex mode just so I can move around some of this stuff and get stuff lined up. And another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to right click in here. Actually, I'm going to do this really quick. I'm going to hit Alt and X. The Alt X key activates transparent or X-ray mode for my mesh. So I can still see my drawings in the background, but then my mesh is translucent so that I can see through it. So let's get some of this stuff lined up. So I'm just going to grab this. I can hit the W key to get my move tool. And I'm going to move this up here. Let's grab this guy right here and let's move this right about here. Now I'm getting this lined up so that I can get some of these major parts of the car defined. So I'm just grabbing stuff and moving this around and getting it defined in my car. So let's grab this right here. It's kind of here where the scoop piece comes in at. Let's bring this up, bring this over. Let's bring this over as well. Now, what I think I like to do with my polygons, I like to keep this very low poly. I'm actually going to bring this up to here. So I'm going to bring this up to where the scoop piece cuts into the door, because I'm going to show you how to do some stuff that'll make your job a little bit easier. Now, the one thing to remember is that the blueprints that you probably will find are not going to be 100% correct. So they're going to be like 90% correct or maybe 85% correct. So it's really good to get yourself a bunch of references of the object you're trying to create when you're working with a model. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to select these edges right here. So I'm in edge mode. I hit 2 on the keyboard and go into edge mode. So I have an edge here, an edge here, edge here, edge here, and they're all currently selected because they're all highlighted red. Now what I want to do is I'm going to come here to where it says connect. When I click on connect, you'll see it connected those 3 edges together. And now if I go back to vertex mode, I have a brand new row of vertices right here, and I can take those and round out this shape. So that's pretty cool. Alright, the next thing I want to do is this. You can also get to your sub objects by just right clicking on your mesh. So I'm going to right click on my mesh and I can go to edge mode, and I'll come down here to edge, grab these 2 edges, and I want to extrude these 2 edges. I'm not going to come to the extrude button. I'm going to come to the Extrude Settings dialog box, and when I click on that, let's give this a minute to fire up, and you can see that I can give this a height of how I want to extrude this, and I can also tell this thing the width of how I want to extrude this. So you can change your extrusion and get some really cool effects on your extrusion. Let's make sure of something right here. I'm going to click on this edge and then click on this edge. Hold control and click on both of those edges. So you can actually extrude edges. Right? Now, one thing that's really cool about 3D Studio Max, which you can't do inside of Maya, if I hold down the Shift key and I move down with the edges selected, my edges will automatically extrude. So you can select an edge and then just move it with your mouse, and you will automatically get a new set of edges, which is something that's really cool. It's actually a very useful way to model, and something that I tell you should get used to. It's actually something that's very useful inside of Max. So I'm just going to get this outlined. Let's lay this out like this. And I've got my car coming together. So I've got this going on. Let's drag this down one more time. I'm trying to get this as round as possible while keeping my polygon count relatively low. And get this right here for the door. So what I want to do, once again, go to edge mode. I'll drag a selection over all of these edges right here, and I'll say connect. Go back into vertex mode and grab this and pull this back a little bit. Alright, I'm going to have to make some additional cuts into this, but right now this is at least a good start. So I can see in my perspective view that this sheet, and I'll un-X-ray this, I'll hit Alt-X again to un-X-ray it. I can see this sheet or this door is actually looking really nice, but it's completely flat. And the door, unless it's a really weird car, the doors should not be flat. So I need to start contouring this over. So I'm going to come in here and select these edges, and in my top view I want to right click into my top view. So the way I do this is I select this stuff in my perspective view and then right click into your other view, and then it'll all still be selected and you can start moving this stuff over. I'll go into vertex mode and grab these guys and pull this a little bit like this, and pull this a little bit like this. One thing you'll notice is my images do not completely match up from picture to picture. So you have to, like we've talked about before, make some executive decisions of how the shape of your car is going to unfold. So I can see this right now. That looks pretty good. When I look at this in perspective, I can see this looks actually pretty good. I've got a nice curve to this. This is rounded out. It seems to work well together. So now that I have that one piece built, I can come in here and I'll go back to top level mode. You can also get the top level mode by hitting the 6 key on your keyboard. And I'm in top level mode right now, and I'm looking at this, and I can kind of see where I want to go next. And where I want to go next is I want to continue working with this back panel and moving this stuff back and getting the back part of my car, getting the bumper and things like that. So I'm going to make a brand new sheet or a brand new polygon. So I'm going to go back to the create menu, go to plane, and I'm going to drag this out right about here. Now, one thing you'll notice is I'm treating these pieces as separate pieces because honestly, in reality, that's how the car would be built. It will be built out of separate pieces of sheet metal. So I'm going to build my 3D car out of separate pieces of polygon sheet metal, as it were. So let's rotate this around and get this kind of lined up right here on this edge. Now, another trick that I use sometimes for this is you also can do this, and I'll actually show you this way because it makes things kind of line up a little bit easier. So I'll delete that for a second, and I'll come in here and I'll click back on my original piece, and what I want to do is I'm going to go back to Polygon to my modify mode, and I'm going to go in here and let's go to edge mode, and we'll say edge, hold shift and get, actually not shift, but I want to hold control and select the edges that I want to use. So I want to use these edges, and I'll drag these out to right about here. Alright, now the thing that's really cool about this is if we look at this in perspective, this is already lined up completely right where this piece is at. Alright, so we're going to do this. I'm going to go to polygon mode, and I'm going to grab these polygons right here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to detach, and I'm going to say detach, and it's going to ask me, do I want to detach this as, and I'll say I want to detach this as a clone. Right, so now I have this piece, so I have this piece and then this piece. By detaching this as a clone, you'll see it gives me two separate surfaces. But the cool thing about this is that these surfaces, they line up, so they completely line up with each other. And you can see that this lines up with my original piece. Alright, and then I can go back into this piece that's left over. I've got some ragged polygons left over in here. I'll select those guys and delete them, and I'll come out of that piece, and then I have my brand new piece. Now, one thing you'll see is I have this this pivot point that's a little bit off. I can fix that by coming in here and going to hierarchy, and I'll say I want to affect pivot only, and I want to center to the object, and then I'll turn off affect pivot only, and you can see my pivot point is now in the center of this new piece that I have. Now I'm going to continue working with this inside of my left side view. So I'm going to go back into vertex mode. I'm going to grab these. I'm just going to drag these up and kind of spread these out a little bit. All right, I don't want to move these too much because the one thing we'll see if I go back to X-ray mode, so I'll hit Alt and X to go back into X-ray mode. One thing we can see is we have that little pushed in piece of geometry that makes the side vent for this. So I'm going to go to edge mode. The edges are still selected, which is really cool, and I'm going to hold shift and drag out a new set of edges, and then hold shift again and drag out a brand new set of edges. Now you might ask, why do I have to drag out two sets of edges? Well, one of these is going to make the part right around the fender. So one of these is going to go right close to where the fender is, like right here. And I'll just pull these out. And I'll mold these into the way they're supposed to look. So this is going to go this way. And these are going to come down here like this. And I'm just molding this around the edge of my schematic right now. So I'm just pulling these right around here the way that it's telling me to. And I want to make these kind of flow like a curve. So I want to make these follow the curve as best I can. So I'm going to make these follow this curve just like that. That works. And I'll come in here, go back to edge mode. I'll grab this edge, hold control and grab this edge. And then I'll hold shift and drag out another set of edges. We'll move this over and go back to vertex and arrange these. This guy's sitting right here. He's fine. It's a pretty big broad piece. We might have to go back in and make some additional cuts into this, but it won't be too bad. It really won't. So we'll go here. Here, this is kind of the halfway point. I'm trying to get this lined up for kind of where the halfway point's at. And I've got that. That looks pretty good. What I want to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go to edge mode. I'm going to go ahead and make an additional cut because I kind of want to see how it's going to look from the beginning. So I'll hold control and click on all these edges. And once again, I'll go back in here to my edit edges section and I'll hit connect. And it gives me a triangle right here, which is fine. I can get rid of this triangle. I can go in here to vertex mode and I can say target weld and then click from one vertex to the other one and then weld that together, and that will weld it up for me. So now I have a little bit better geometry, and I've got it curving like I need to have it curve, and that looks okay. And let's look at this from my top view. Let's come up here and look at this in my top view. I can see that this right here is going to come over in X. This is this piece right here. This is going to come over, and then I've got this other piece right about here, which needs to start coming over. And if I look at this, I've got these pieces here, which this is that side piece, and I'm just going to take this, I'm going to drag it out to the edge of this, and I've got some other pieces in here that need to come out, and I'm just going to grab my edge tool and do that. And from my top view, I can see where these guys are right about here, and just drag these out. So I'm just kind of getting these lined up with where they need to be. One thing you'll notice is there's like two edges, and I've got a row of edges here going like a curve and a row of edges here going in a curve. So these edges here, I want to take these and push these in because these make up like the part that's closest to the body. Let's do that. Go to vertex mode. You have to realize what mode you want to be in to manipulate the pieces that you need to. Some modes will move both of your pieces, which is great. Sometimes you don't need it to move both pieces at one time, or a lot of pieces at one time. So just be mindful of what you truly need it for at that point in time. So we'll get these lined up. And if we look at this in perspective, we can see, let's undo that, we can see we have this nice cool piece right here. And one thing I'm looking at, just knowing this car, this has a nice line that goes up and over this way. So I'm probably going to cut this. I can do this in vertex mode. I'm going to go and get down here into my edit geometry, I'm going to get my cut tool. And when I'm on top of a vertex, it'll show up like this. So I'm going to get my cut tool and cut here. And you have to be very careful. This tool can be a little wonky. It works off of the angle that you're looking at. So I've got this a little bit better setup here, and then cut here. And then you see I have a vertex sitting right here. I'll grab this guy, and looking at this on my side view, I'll kind of pull this up and straighten this out. Kind of pull this up and straighten this out. Right? Now, some people would look at this and say, well, you have triangles going on. Well, triangles are not bad. I can have a triangle. I just don't want to have an n-gon. And an n-gon is anything that is over 4 vertexes and 4 edges. So if you ever have a polygon that has more than 4 vertexes and has more than 4 edges, my friend, you have an n-gon, and you want to get rid of that as soon as you can. N-gons are notoriously bad for your models. They actually end up making your models smooth in a very weird way. And I'll show you what a smooth does in just a second, because I'm going to actually have a smooth on this object. Right? So if you end up with an n-gon or really messed up geometry, you want to fix that as soon as you can. N-gons do not do anything good for your mesh ever. I promise you. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to continue to move this back, and I'm going to continue going back with this, and then in the next lesson I'll pick up and we'll start on the bumper and some of the side skirts, and actually do the hood and the front fender. So we'll be right back after this.